I promise a second dramatic conclusion. You guys ready?
Yeah.
I'm now moving Bernie Sanders to the favorite.
Whoa, Nelly!
55% chance he wins the nomination. Okay.
Cenk
Is that
Uygur
rounded or is it exactly?
No, it's
Wow.
exact.
Cenk Uygur comes into a Friday show all jacked up.
As I looked at the map and all the states Hillary Clinton's supposed to win, outside of the South, I thought, no, she's not. And I didn't do that based on, oh my God, and I'm looking at polling, I'm looking at momentum, I'm looking at the results we've already gotten, I'm seeing how much he outperformed the polling in Iowa and New Hampshire. And as you look at all that and you look at some of the assumptions baked into the numbers, as I was talking to Ben about this off air, they say, oh, well, she's obviously going to win New York because she was a senator from New York. That's not at all obvious. She was running against a Republican in New York, not against Bernie Sanders.
Our election desk is projecting that when all the votes are counted in the state of New York, Hillary Clinton will be the victor on the Democratic side.
So we're about halfway through Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, perhaps even more than halfway through. A great number of Republican senators have ceded their time to the prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell, who's asking the questions on their behalf. And now I'm beginning to believe that Rachel Mitchell is on the level and is not necessarily trying to prove a case. I don't know because we're not at the end yet, but is just trying to ascertain what's happening. If she is an honest actor in that way, she might simply just be going through all this and go, okay, we got the information we needed and there are really no inconsistencies. Rachel Mitchell could end this entire thing. If they ask her tomorrow, did you find her credible? And she says, yes, I absolutely found her credible. Then Kavanaugh is done. To anyone that isn't massively biased, and apparently to some that even are, she looks very, very credible.
You've talked about norepinephrine and cortisol and what we call in the profession, basically the neurobiological effects of trauma. Have you also educated yourself on the best way to get to memory and truth in terms of interviewing victims of trauma?
For me, interviewing victims of trauma?
No, the best way to do it, the best practices for interviewing victims of trauma.
No.
Okay. Would you believe me if I told you that there's no study that says that this setting in 5-minute increments is the best way to do that?
We'll stipulate for that.
We can stipulate that.
Thank you, counsel.
Agreed.
Did you know that the best way to do it is to have a trained interviewer talk to you one-on-one in a private setting and to let you do the talking, just let you do a narrative? Did you know that?
That makes a lot of sense.
Does make a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
And then to follow up, obviously to fill in the details and ask for clarification. Does that make sense as well?
Yes.
And the research is done by a lot of people in the child abuse field. Two of the more prominent ones in the sexual assault field are Giesel and Fisher, who've talked about it. And it's called a cognitive interview. This is not a cognitive interview. Did anybody ever advise you from Senator Feinstein's office or from Representative Eshu's office to go get a forensic interview?
No.
Instead, you were advised to get an attorney and take a polygraph. Is that right?
Many people advised me to get an attorney. Once I had an attorney, my attorney and I discussed using the polygraph.
And instead of submitting to an interview in California, we're having a hearing here today in 5-minute increments. Is that right?
I agree that's what was agreed upon by the collegial group here.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, my best estimation right now is that they will withdraw him and fairly quickly. And when I say I think they'll withdraw him, that means not only do I believe her, and not only do I think the majority of Americans will believe her, but I think that she was so convincing the Republicans will think this is politically untenable for us. So that's where I'm at right now as we stand.
President Trump did watch from his Air Force One cabin, surrounded by reporters, as Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed. The president has now put his imprint on the Supreme Court with 2 conservative justices. He will take a victory lap tonight at a rally in Kansas after what he called a horrible attack by Democrats on his new justice.
Let me tell you what I think happened, and then you will see later that this is true, if I'm right. He did a business deal with Russia, a deal where he gets paid. Tick-tock, tick-tock. On day one, I didn't know if he was going to go the whole 4 years. I assumed he would. And then as I saw one mistake after another in the Russia story developing a little bit, I thought, oh my God, I think he's only going to last a year and a half. Now I'm moving the clock even further. He might not last 6 months because he did a deal with the Russians. The number one thing and almost the only thing he cares about is money. Money. He did a business deal with the Russians. You give me money, you give me a portion of the oil contracts, then I lift the sanctions for you guys. So when I lift the sanctions, I Donald J. Trump, make money. That's the deal he did.
Nobody been tougher on Russia.
That was President Trump on Tuesday, reiterating his administration's tough stance on Russia. And today, they struck again. The Treasury Department imposed new sanctions on 7 Russian oligarchs, 17 Russian officials, and 12 Russian companies. The list takes direct aim at Russian President Vladimir Putin's inner circle and is considered the strongest move yet by the U.S.
What happens, now this is what I think is going to happen, is that the establishment wants Elizabeth Warren to run because she's kind of friendly to the establishment, even though she's a progressive. Mm-hmm. And so then she splits the progressive vote, and then it has to go to a second ballot. The superdelegates vote, and we get Kamala Harris or Cory Booker.
Yeah, no.
Now tell me how that doesn't happen.
I don't think that would happen. I don't see them both going that long. I think that it could be the case that throughout all those primaries, the vote is so closely split. But I don't think that's the case. Based on the polling that I've seen, Bernie has a significant advantage over Elizabeth Warren. So I don't think that she'd be close enough that she would want to, especially considering how much affection she has for Bernie. She talks constantly, positively about him and working with him. I just don't think that she would risk ruining how the voters see her by tanking him if he's clearly winning at that point.
Heading into tonight's debate, a battle is brewing between the 2 leading progressives. Elizabeth Warren confirming reports about a private meeting in 2018 with Bernie Sanders. Writing in a statement overnight, among the topics that came up was what would happen if Democrats nominated a female candidate. I thought a woman could win. He disagreed. The Sanders campaign instructed its volunteers to portray Warren as the candidate of elites in conversations with voters.
I hope Bernie reconsiders and turns his campaign in a different direction.
Okay, so I'm going to answer Jimmy's question with a bold prediction, because that's how I roll. So this is the day after Labor Day in the year 2018. And I will tell you the final 4 in the Democratic primary for 2020. So Bernie Sanders, clear favorite, will be in the final 4. Kamala Harris will be in the final 4. Elizabeth Warren and Kirsten Gillibrand. Have you noticed I left Biden out of the top 4? Because Biden is a fader. He has never done well in presidential primaries. He will not do well in this one. The reason why he's polling next to Bernie Sanders in the top right now is because he has enormous name recognition, enormous. Lieberman was ranking number 1 before the elections got started in 2004. Why? Because he was Gore's running mate in 2000. But I told you then he'd have no Joe-mentum, and he didn't. Because people don't actually like him, especially Democratic voters, especially in primaries. So now Biden's not anywhere near as bad as Joe Lieberman, but Biden will fade.
We're going to begin this morning after Joe Biden's big night. The former vice president seized a commanding lead after major wins in last night's primaries, building on his momentum in the race for the White House and significantly narrowing a path to victory for Bernie Sanders. Now, Biden won in at least 4 of 6 primary states, with 2 states still too close to call. And in the coveted state of Michigan, he dealt a blow to the Sanders campaign with a decisive double-digit victory. Biden now leads by 150 delegates.
Dianne Feinstein was so quick to, and Nancy Pelosi were like, not him, the other person in the race. Okay. And they keep bragging about how they handpicked her. gee, what does that remind you of? I've seen this movie before, except this movie has a different ending because I'm going to win. Jank2020.com, okay? Because every time these sons of bitches attack me, you guys give whatever you can. $1, $5, $10, $27 if you can. That would be amazing. So they're like, wait, should we attack him again? I thought being super unfair to him was going to work. Like, but now it's backfired.
Really? That's
Yes.
great.
So what are you going to do now? All these people who are in these clubs and who are trying to like crawl up the political ladder in California. Oh, Christy, I know you're going to win. Nancy Pelosi's on your side. Oh, I disqualified Cenk. I disqualified him. Okay, well, I'll see you on election day, okay? And we'll see who's disqualified. There's no backpedal in me. That's why they're so afraid of me. That's why they're throwing the kitchen sink at me. They're throwing everything they got at me. And when they probably thought yesterday that they knocked me out, and they're like, oh, the New York Times, LA Times, and CNN have weighed in. They have declared you a bad person. So anyway, this race is over. And when I got back up on Twitter and I told them, nope, not interested. All I care about is the issues and the voters. I don't want the endorsements. And guess what? I just raised a ton of money because of your smear job. Wish I could have seen their faces in their campaign headquarters and their Democratic clubs like, what? He got back up? Right? What? Why hasn't he surrendered to the elite yet? No surrender. Sad day for you. If you want surrender, you picked the wrong guy. Jimmy, they picked a fight with a fighter. It's a big mistake, Cenk 2020.
And life was nothing but for a soul. But now I know the meaning of true love. I'm leaning on the everlasting arm. If I can see it, then I can do it. If I just believe it, there's nothing new it. I believe I can fly. I believe I can.
California's 25th congressional district is one of the most competitive in the country.
We'll start with the results for the special election. On top right now, Democrat Christy Smith with 34%, followed by Republican Mike Garcia. Since it looks like neither candidate will get an outright majority, they'll likely face off again in another election on May 12th. The person who wins will have the seat until January. And then here's the race to fill the seat starting in 2021 for a 2-year term. Smith leads here as well, followed by Garcia. No one can win this outright, so the top 2 finishers here must go on to the November election.
What I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost that.